Hey class, this is Carlos Osuna. I will be presenting an online course I designed as part of my final project. The title of this online course is Cultural Inquiry and Problem Solving. It's an online course for high school teachers. You will also notice I did attach a syllabus, and I encourage you to look at the syllabus as it provides some perspective on the course. But before we dive in, I will want to take a moment to step back and discuss a little bit about the purpose of this course. And that is mainly this course is really focused on high school teachers in advisory. And so advisory, just to take a couple step back, advisory is essentially if you recall from K to 12 years, you probably had homeroom or what is now known as advisory, where it's more intentional, where we have a teacher and it still looks like a classroom setting in the sense that there's a teacher and a bunch of students. However, there's is not a subject teaching, rather it's advisory where they take an opportunity to advise students. And this may look very different for every school, depending on the school philosophy, etc. But and also depending on the year of the student. So especially for senior, you could imagine that they're probably doing a lot of college prep, all that good stuff, and then maybe perhaps freshman year, sophomore year, they're doing a lot of restorative practice or other needs. So it really depends on the school needs and the student needs, and the teacher kind of creates fun, but also education and meaningful purpose for these advisory session. So this course is really targeting that perspective, and it's really talking about advisory culture, school culture, and how teachers could think about when they create their advisory, how are they really thinking and being intentional around culture inquiry and problem solving. I will be using a model that I'm very familiar with, which is a big picture learning school. So big picture learning has over 65 schools in the US, and they have really been very intentional on creating advisory culture. So I'll be using a lot of that framework in throughout my presentation. But you'll notice in the syllabus that I state you don't necessarily have to be a teacher at Big Picture Learning School. Rather, maybe there's other teachers that really appreciate the principles and the framework and they want to implement it in their advisory. So let's go ahead and dive deep on the presentation. And for the presentation, I do want to mention that I'll go over um, the overview of the course as well as going in details with one of the module, and that module would be module 1. So by the end of the course, teachers who are creating advisory in their school will be able to deepen a clear understanding and explore how their role in relation to school culture. They will use tools and framework to understand culture throughout the lens of relationship, relevance, and rigor, which are really the core themes around this course. And then 3, deepen understanding and develop tools to support inquiry, restorative practices, and student voice. And also, we'll be thinking about how to create a professional learning plan to move forward with the teacher's vision of effective advisory culture. So for this course, there are 5 modules. In module 1, which I'll go more details towards the end of this presentation, but just a really quick uh, preview, module 1 focuses on introducing culture. So as you'll see in the screen, this module will be investigating the following question. What does it mean to think about culture in a big picture school? Again, I'm using big picture school as a framework around thinking about advisory. And then I would want to explore what is your role, meaning what is the teacher's role within the advisory, and just really being able to unpack that and make meaning out of that. And then also, what are the underlying themes, framework, and concept when you think about advisory culture? So for this module, module 2 is really focusing on the concept of relationship. As you can see on the screen, there's a couple of questions I would like to explore with the high school teachers who are taking the course, and really thinking about how do powerful relationship influence culture, as well as thinking about um, how do their expectation, interaction, priorities support powerful relationship. How do they support student and family voices, and what structure prioritize relationship? And it's really being intentional around like relationship, because um, when it comes to advisory, relationship is really at the heart of learning. And so really thinking about how can we build and implement system and structure to facilitate a powerful relationship. um, and this takes a lot of time and practice and personal interaction. So this module will be exploring a lot of that and really unpacking what a powerful relationship looks like. So for this module, we'll be really focusing on defining relevance. As I mentioned in the course objectives, relevant is one of the key themes throughout when it comes to building an advisory culture. Um, and at big picture, we're really thinking there is like a famous kind of philosophy that we go about, which is if you plan more than 25% of what you're doing in a big picture school before you even know your student, then you're no longer doing big picture. And that is really thinking about, again, relevance around your students. And so relevance here, we're really thinking about the what their students are learning in school, how relevant is it within their personal life, and how are they making meaning out of that, as well as making a connection for the future. So in this particular module, we'll be doing a lot of case studies, we'll be doing a lot of reflection around relevance and how to really think about planning for relevance in their advisory. For this module, we'll be focusing on rigor. Rigor is really thinking about high quality, excellence, and how students are approaching their learning to develop the necessary skills and competency for them to really pursue their own interests. So for this course, I want to explore a couple of questions with this high school teacher that will be taking this class, and really thinking about what is the relationship between making decision and problem solving, really thinking about feedback and how that could influence culture. Also, since it is touching on problem solving, we'll be also thinking about best practices around that, and also thinking about restorative practices, since advisory in general, a huge component of that is restorative practice, and having deep dialogues. We want to make sure that teachers have some tools and resources when it comes to thinking about restorative practice in regards to really rigorous problem solving. So the last module, module 5, it's really putting everything all together. The questions that I want to explore with the high school teachers taking this class is really thinking about what is their vision for advisory culture, what are some indicators to measure that, as well as what system enhances collective skills at humanizing practices. And we'll be doing a lot of reviews from the previous modules, as the previous module really unpacked all those frameworks and all the concepts. And for this one, it's really now putting into practice. So there's going to be a lot of tools, a lot of templates, a lot of reflection around their vision and how they're thinking about supporting their vision of culture. So now that you had a better sense of what the course is about, I want to take an opportunity to dive deep in what are the modules. And I decided to focus on module 1. So we will go over all the activities, assignments, and all the things that a high school teacher will go through if they were to take module 1. As you can see on the screen, the first section of module 1 is Introduction to Culture. So Introduction to Culture, in this particular section, the high school teachers will go through some readings, and the purpose of that is to really help them to unpack and start to think about the meaning of culture. We will look at videos of what is culture. We will also hear from principals of a big picture school, what culture looks like, see some examples, as well as dive deep of some reflection questions. So for this section, framework for understanding culture, we will really dive deep of advisory culture experience. And we will look at a couple of videos that we have interview advisors when it comes to thinking about culture and how they've done that. Um, and also, I will show you in the next slide, but we will also take the opportunity to introduce the core indicators for really effective advisory culture. So again, this is the core indicators of effective advisory culture. The three key themes are relationship, rigors, and relevance, which I think I mentioned already in the overview of the course. But take a moment to pause the video and look at it in details. But in this section, we will want to really dive deep in defining these particular themes. So once we introduce the core indicators for an effective advisory culture, we would then want to unpack assumption and bias, and we will be using teaching tolerance assessment. So teaching tolerance is actually an organization. You could search them online, really great features and tools. And they have an assessment around some of the ways to unpack assumption and bias and what are their teaching biases. So we will have our high school teachers taking this course to take this assessment to really start thinking about some of the ways their assumptions are influencing the way they're creating the advisory culture. And we will have some reflection on that as well as a discussion. So after the high school teachers take the teaching tolerance assessment, we will then give them an opportunity to do an assignment, which I'm calling unpacking privilege, which will allow them to reevaluate their assessment, take an opportunity to reflect around their assessment, and then provide them some questions to think about how that is maybe a form of privilege, and then start to really unpack those particular assessment and what they want to do moving forward. So another similar assessment that we want high school teachers to go through is the implicit association test, which was actually created through researchers at Harvard. And in this particular assessment, teachers will go through, which really thinks about implicit biases and really making meaning out of that. And so part of that, they'll be able to take the test and get the results. And again, we'll have some assignment and templates to allow them to think about reflection as well as what they want to do moving forward now that they have a better, robust understanding of their biases and assumptions and really unpacking all that. So in the last section of Module 1, we'll have a more deeper thinking on differences. And this is really a reflection and assignment around drawing those connections now that you have done all the work, now that you've done all the assessment and reflection, like now moving forward, what are some of the things that you want to work on? So or at least I feel that this is a really crucial point of Module 1 because then this kind of sets the foundation of understanding and making more of your learning and tailored towards Module 2, Module 3, Module 4 that will help you to really unpack those specific themes as a way for you as you continue to learn about how to effectively create advisory for your school. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. And I look forward to seeing your presentation as well as I look forward to seeing some comments and reflection and some feedback. And I guess I'll see you in our last class next week. Thanks.